Okay, so, how does the app work? What does it do? Why do we need an app to help us keep disconnected from technology?
So you would have thought we wouldn't need an app, but Emily, there's been so much writing over the last few months about how addictive technology has become and how, in fact, deliberate that addiction is, how social media companies especially use algorithms, machine learning, to use likes and social feedback loops and dopamine hits to keep us hooked. So the app is like a coach, a guide to help us recalibrate our relationship with our phone. The two most important features are, first, it's bidirectional. So if you are in thrive mode, because let's say you're having dinner with your family and I text you, I'll get a text back that says Emily is in thrive mode until such and such a time, which will both let your friends know that you are not ignoring them, you're just in thrive mode and not to be distracted. But also it will help change the culture. It will help change the cultural expectations. Right now the expectation is that we need to be always on. We need to respond to texts immediately. And the second feature is a dashboard that gives you a mirror of your social media consumption. How much time you've spent every day on Instagram or Candy Crush or any of the apps you may be more addicted to, you'd be surprised. And then you can set a limit. You can tell the app to give you notifications about how much time you are spending and cut you off at a certain time. On the bidirectional feature, you have a small group of people you can exclude who can always get through to you, your VIP list, so that way your children or your aged parent or someone who always needs to get through can get through.
So you have a partnership with Samsung now. When is it coming to the iPhone, and what is the strategy for broader use here?
So it will come to the iPhone in the next 6 months. We're developing it right now. We have a partnership with Samsung, both for the app. It's now available on the Galaxy Note 8. But also we launched together a dedicated section on Thrive Global called Humanity and Technology, which is all about this inflection point in our time. You know, Emily, it's become a big issue in Silicon Valley and beyond about what is technology doing to us. This is the first time when we are actually no longer assuming that technology is exclusively virtuous. And we have a lot of data about what it's done to our lives, and a lot of it has been incredibly positive, but we have more and more data about what it's doing to ourselves. Horrific data about mental health problem increases among young kids and teenagers, depression, anxiety, suicides, and the connection between how much time you spend on your devices and those mental health problems is very clear. We had investors emailing Apple, asking them to do something about the impact our phones are having on our children. We have Mark Zuckerberg announcing changes in order to, as he put it, promote our well-being. So something amazing is happening in our culture. And the Thrive app and the Humanity and Technology section on Thrive Global are ways to address this growing concern.
How much responsibility do you think the platforms like Facebook bear and companies like Apple bear for tech addiction, if you will?
Well, Apple and Facebook are different. If you sell hardware, you still have some responsibility to have features that can protect especially children from abuse of the phone. If you're a social media company, as you know, in the attention economy, social media companies are deliberately mining more and more of our attention because that's how they increase revenue and profits. So that's where it's going to be very important for social media companies to put the public interest ahead of revenue, which may seem like an impossible task, but we know now that unless they do that, the backlash is going to keep growing.
Are there other changes that you think a company like Facebook should be making?
I think basically looking at what is the impact of constantly pushing notifications. I don't know about you, but I have shut off all notifications except from friends. I don't want to know everybody likes a photo. I love Instagram, I love all the social media apps, but I also set clear limits to how much I use them and clear limits to how much I allow notifications, alerts, etc. to be disturbing my life, you know, my ability to connect with my friends, my colleagues, my ability to do deep work, or simply to unplug and recharge.
What about a company like YouTube? There's been some criticism of YouTube Kids, for example, and these extremely long compilations of Peppa Pig videos and surprise egg videos which simply just show eggs popping open, but kids are obsessed with them. What responsibility does YouTube have in this conversation?
I think all companies have a responsibility when it comes to the use of algorithms to actually push certain content to consumers, especially young consumers, because we know that these are not sort of neutral tools. You know, algorithms and machine learning know precisely what content to push to whom in order to increase clicking and social sharing. That's where the responsibility comes. And now we have a growing demand from consumers, from investors, from governments, especially in Europe, to bring about fundamental changes. So I think 2018 is going to be the year for recalibrating our relationship with technology. But while we are asking companies to do more, we also need to empower consumers to do more themselves, because of course we have the power to decide when we disconnect from our phones. The truth is that that doesn't make us anti-technology. In the same way that when you turn off the lights at night to go to sleep, it doesn't make you anti-electricity. We just need to take charge of our lives, take back control of our time, and return to our lives recharged.
You remain in a major role on the Uber board. Now that the SoftBank deal is done, you know, what shape would you say the company is in under Dara's leadership? You know, when will they be appointing a board chair? Will the company be ready for an IPO next year?
I think the company is in a really strong position. The SoftBank deal is incredibly important. Uber will now have on its board Rajiv Misra, the CEO of the Vision Fund that led the new funding. And what is so important is that SoftBank is at the center of the ride-hailing industry globally. So it's so great for Uber to have SoftBank now as a major investor. Dara is doing an amazing job. The cultural values have been revamped. Tremendous progress in the last few months. He's hired a new COO, a new general counsel. There is an interviewing process for a new chairman. So I think everything is on track.
And do you think an IPO could happen as early as next year?
Well, already Dara has said that the IPO will be in 2019, and there's nothing that has happened that would change that.
You mentioned the new general counsel, Tony West. How is Tony doing so far? And do you think that Uber will continue to be dogged by these Justice Department investigations, or how long will this sort of cloud be hanging over the company?
I don't think it's a cloud hanging over the company. I think it's bringing everything to the surface to be dealt with. And at the same time, the company is doing great things. It's not as if these issues of what had happened in the past are dominating everything. The company is growing, bringing in new major investment, bringing in great leadership talent. So I think what's happening on the legal front is obviously necessary in order to deal with all these problems, but it's not in any way consuming Dara.
I'm so glad you're here because I'm just dying to ask you this question. I'm sure you've been following the Aziz Ansari stories over the weekend, and a publication, Babe.net, publishing a big story about an encounter that a woman had with him that she described as sexual assault. There's been a lot of backlash to this reporting. The New York Times saying he's guilty of simply not being a mind reader. The Washington Post saying that this could derail the Me Too movement. Talk a little bit about what you think the responsibility is of the media here, and your take on whether this was going too far or whether this is a legitimate conversation to be having right now.
Obviously, the Me Too movement is incredibly important. It's historic, and followed by the Time's Up movement that will look not just at celebrities, but at women in low-wage jobs who are often victimized more than anyone else. I think what is very important is to make distinctions between what is sexual assault and what is inappropriate behavior, and to also listen to both sides. I mean, due process, justice have to prevail, because this is a huge culture change, and we want everyone to participate in it. And the only way this is going to happen is by actually allowing due process, allowing people who are accused to tell their story. That's at the heart of any process of justice.
So do you think that that story should have been published? Would the Huffington Post have published it?
Well, it's not a question of whether it should have been published. The question is, are both sides being heard? I think that's the key. It's not about silencing accusers. We should not go back to doing that. But it's also about allowing the accused to tell their side of the story.
And where do you think the movement is going? Do you have any concerns that the movement could go off track or get out of control? Or do you believe this is going to lead us to a truly better place?
I definitely think it's going to lead us to a better place. I think people are speaking out who otherwise would have been afraid. I have two millennial daughters in their 20s. So one of the things I love about the movement is the fact that it empowers young women and women of all ages to speak in real time. They don't have to wait for years, stay angry and resentful for years. We are now creating a culture that empowers them and enables them to speak in real time. And I think HR departments need to focus on that. How quickly can these problems be surfaced? How quickly can they be dealt with?
All right, Arianna Huffington, always great to have you here on the show. Thank you so much for stopping by, and congrats on the Thrive app launch.
Thank you so much, Emily.